Who says you can't survive on bread alone? On today's menu. At the center of a meal on nearly every table across the globe is one simple staple: bread. Yannick Tanguy embraces old world values in upstate New York.
Bread is alive. It has this beautiful, unpredictable nature.
A five-star chef perfects a South Indian opera.
Here in India, bread is more than a side dish. It's the way we eat.
The history behind Tuscan saltless bread.
For the taste of any Tuscan, this is the bread you want on your table.
A world-renowned bread expert on the hunt for Paris's best baguette.
It requires nothing else. You don't need ham and cheese. You don't need jelly.
I've always tried to make bread that's somehow the magical bread of once upon a time. Dreaming about the way you want your bread to come out, you know, the way it should taste. Bread is alive, and it has this beautiful and unpredictable nature. The art of baking bread is sort of like magic. All of a sudden, this thing comes to life. You know, how do you know it's these little microorganisms, you know? And does it really matter? My name is Yannick Tanguy. We're in Crown Point, New York, on top of Buck Mountain.
1, 2.
275 miles north of New York City, Yannick Tanguy dreams of life as an 18th century baker. He sees baking as a life experiment and bread as philosophy, simple and utterly authentic.
I have a little bakery on Main Street, right in the middle of town. When I was little, I loved bread. I always missed the bread when I came back from visiting my grandmother in France. I started trying to bake bread when I was little, and one thing led to another, and I found myself as a baker. So, really the way it works is there's yeast in the air. It's on all fruits, it's on everything. In a pound of flour, there will naturally be about 15,000 or so beneficial yeasts and bacteria. Even if you just start with good flour, and it has to be spring water. If it has any chlorine at all, it'll take much longer. In a day, if you just mix flour and water together, the next day it'll bubble up and you'll be on your way. The process that we're using, it's very close to the way bread was baked 100 years ago or 200 years ago, once upon a time. And one of the things I really have enjoyed exploring is the way flour works and backtracking from the bread to the flour through the milling process and how the farmer grows the wheat. The old-fashioned way of harvesting the wheat and planting the wheat is much different, obviously, than the modern way.
Now this field here we're coming into is soft white winter wheat and hard red winter wheat on the upper side.
I've been buying wheat from Ken Van Hazinga for years now.
Soft white is actually redder appearing at this stage of its growth, where this still has a lot of green and is light yet, because this will be probably 2 weeks later maturing.
He has a wizardly aspect to him, and he has an intuitive understanding of what's going on in the ground.
In the early 1800s, Champlain Valley was the breadbasket of New England. It had the climate and the expanse of land necessary for large-scale wheat growing, but it was a crop that followed the frontier west. These are the wheat berries that are still green. Squish them, you can see that they're still a little bit damp. Basically it's dough because it's the starch mixed in with water. When it's ready to be harvested, you can use the old standby and just put some in your mouth and chew it. And when they crunch, you know they're ready. Now they're just wicked soft.
Sometimes I think people get tired of the old way of doing things and they want to improve. They want to come up with a newer, better way. And sometimes I think it's just a newer way and not necessarily a better way.
Just to have the diversity, because that's what it's all about. I mean, this looks like a bank of weeds and stuff, but there's all kinds of flowers in there for insect pollinators.
Oh, really?
That's why the bees go nuts over them.
And you just let that happen the way nature intends it to?
Right. So anytime you have a variety of species, it's a good thing. Now, what's this? It's some kind of a rogue wheat. This apparently is spelt. What I might do is hand harvest this and plant it out separately just to see what it does. Or this could be just some terrible weed.
We have a stone mill. We can sift off different grades of flour. Then when we're baking, we mix all kinds of different flours together. Millers always feel their flour. That's how they tell how fine the grind is. The danger of becoming successful and making a lot of product, you get away from happy people putting really good energy into the food. Your food is almost emotionally sterile, going through this process where it's never touched by human hands. Big agribusiness, big tractors, machines need a certain conformity to work well in that process. It's like the old saying, simplicity is beauty. I wish the bakery could be not mechanized, just run by really simple machines. This wheat tastes pretty good. It's kind of sweet.
That's a good bite to it.
Maybe this is just a romantic notion, but it's what I think.
Bread is in all cultures. Here in India, bread is more than a side dish. It's the way we eat. It's the utensil. My name is Shobha Narayan, and I'm a food writer based in Bangalore, India.
The breads of India are as rich and varied as its culture. Made on a stovetop and often without yeast, these flatbreads are created from a variety of Eastern grains native to the continent.
In India, there are many kinds of breads, and it's in many shapes. In South India, we have idlis, which are rice and lentil dumplings. We have puri, which is a puffed bread. And then you have dosas, which are like crepes. In rural India, we have something that looks like a donut. It's called ragi mudde. And then you have the rotis, which are the North Indian breads. You have parathas, which are stuffed rotis. And a really special paratha, one of everybody's favorites, is a Malabar paratha. It's made with this dough that is rolled into itself like a spiral. And then it's rolled out. And it's laden with lots of butter and ghee. And when it comes off the griddle, in order to enhance the layers, the chef sort of puffs it up with his hands. Everybody loves it. It's flaky and white and has many layers, and it's yummy.
At the Windsor Hotel in Bangalore, five-star chef Vijay Malhotra reveals the technique behind one of the most unique Indian breads, appam.
The appam is sort of a funny, wobbly bread. It's shaped like a Mexican sombrero, and it was fermented traditionally with the liquor that comes from the coconut tree. What defines a good appam is that it has to be feathery on the top and dense in the middle.
There's so much to discover in this cuisine.
Right.
We used two types of rice in this. One is raw rice or the dosa rice.
Okay.
And the other rice, now this is the boiled rice. And then we add another 100 grams of dal to it. I will soak this entire thing, then I grind it.
Oh.
I'll mix it up with sugar, salt, and this is the coconut milk which is going in. Okay. It's going to make the product a little more airy. And
so it'll
this
make
is
it light.
Yes, it'll make it light. Yeah. Okay, voila, my batter is ready here. See, to make it a soft center, I'll just take a wee bit of extra tablespoon of batter into my ladle.
Okay. Yeah, see, this is the best. Yeah.
See how I go like this?
The way he tosses it. And the little batter which
Yeah,
is
that settles down at the bottom.
That's what makes it sweet.
Oh, wow.
So now the center is cooked.
Yes. See how easily it's been coming off?
Oh, this looks lovely. Just look at the brown.
There you've seen one of the most simple things.
It's really good. It's good.
I have some traditional masalas, some spices. Traditionally, what I'll do is I'll just sprinkle a little on top of the appam. Just put a little ghee on top and have it.
It's more sweet.
In every culture, bread is the food of life.
You're doing well. You're doing very good. You want to try?
And so it is in India.
That's it. That's it.
This actually turned out quite well.
Yes. Tuscan bread is one of the culinary items of which Tuscans are proud. In fact, they talk about olive oil, wine, and bread being the holy trinity of Tuscan food. I'm Lori Demori, a food writer based in Tuscany.
The foundation of a Tuscan meal is bread. Rustic and hearty, Tuscan bread perfectly complements the region's robust cuisine and inspires a local specialty, panzanella, Tuscan bread salad.
We are in the hills above a town called LIωρίAlthough the village is tiny, many people come through here. They stop at Varis's shop, have sandwiches made, and take them with them on their travels. Buongiorno, Varis.
Buongiorno, Lori. Ciao.
Varis is known for making pane toscano, which is unsalted, naturally leavened Tuscan bread. Tuscans refer to their bread as sciocco. It means saltless. And much of the cuisine is so salty that it's considered to be a perfect balance. Perfetto.
Iniziamo.
Allora, cosa abbiamo qui?
Oh, questa è la pasta madre.
This is the mother. This is called the mother.
Autore di lievitazione.
Varis, like all traditional bread makers, doesn't use commercial yeast. This has been rising for overnight. This mother's 7 years old. It's the same idea as yogurt, where there's a culture added to milk. With the mother, the yeast, which is nurtured along every day, every time bread is made, will help the flour and water mixture rise. Traditional Tuscan bread was made in wood-burning ovens. It's the only way. They always bake bread with the wood from these mountains up here. Chestnut's a favorite, also oak. You might imagine that you would only use wood like this to start a fire, and then you'd put in bigger pieces. In this case, this is all he'll use.
Cioè la forma della cupola.
Because if you use big pieces of wood, you'd have the floor of the oven overheated and the ceiling of the oven not heated enough. Bread that's cooked in this oven is going to have a much thicker crust.
Beh, io sono nativo di questi.
In some ways, Varis didn't choose so much the life of the baker as the life of living up in this little village. So the dough has risen for 20 minutes, and he's going to start making the individual balls. Time to put the bread in the oven. Why is Tuscan bread saltless? Well, the legend goes that in the days when Tuscany was still a collection of city-states, Pisa was its own little country, Florence was its own little country. None of them got along, and they were always warring with each other. And Pisa, being near the sea,
Allora avevano un sale.
they had salt, and they had a salt tax. And so the rest of Tuscany said, keep your salt, we're making our bread without it. Meglio morto in casa che un
Che un paesano alla porta.
There's an old saying, better a dead person in the house than someone from Pisa at the door, because that man from Pisa at the door was the guy coming to collect the salt tax. È pronta?
È pronta.
Tuscans in general have a real aversion to gastronomic waste of any kind. This is all day-old bread, and it could even be week-old bread. We could seriously build a small house with these, it feels like. One of the interesting qualities of Tuscan bread is that it has the ability to go hard without becoming moldy and to absorb water without becoming gluey. Rather than throw away stale old bread, today we're making panzanella.
Principalmente con pomodoro e cipolla e un po' di basilico.
Olive oil, tomatoes, onion, basil. This is a perfect summer lunch. Just a little aceto, vinegar. Fatto, grazie. Bello. Panzanella. Grazie. Sei stata brava. Salute e complimenti. Oh, I love this. This tastes like summer. For his taste, and pretty much for the taste of any Tuscan, this is the bread you want on your table. Ecco, that's gorgeous.
Bread is so important in France that the government in 1993 passed an edict that we call the Bread Decree. It's a matter of national concern.
Bread does more than nourish. It shapes culture. No one knows that better than Stephen Kaplan, a social historian and world-renowned French bread expert. He spent decades studying the French obsession with bread and scouring the bakeries of Paris for the perfect baguette.
This is the Étoile du Berger. It's one of 3 bakeries in the southern suburbs of Paris that's run by Franck de Bieu.
Bonjour, Steve.
Bien. He's a man of enormous sophistication, but also of great simplicity. And I came in touch with him because we were both thinking about the same kinds of things, how we could rediscover the fundamentals of French bread making. When you look at French history, after the Second World War, bakers became very complacent because people just wanted white bread. They began making bread that was highly mechanized. They weren't good at it. It wasn't very good bread.
15 minutes encore.
The return of bakers to traditional bread-making practices has given bread, I think, a new life. What we're going to see now, the first process is kneading. And here he's adding the leaven, which is the agent of fermentation, to the dough, which is a combination of water and of flour. Most bakers use yeast. 95% of all the baguettes in France today are yeast-based baguettes, and some of them are very good. But Franck has gone back. Franck uses liquid leaven, and it has these multiple strains of microorganisms. There are literally tens of millions of bacteria and fungi that are now going to be doing the job, creating the gases that are going to give life to this flour and water. After the kneading is done, you're ready for the long first fermentation, which is the geyser of all the tastes and all of the aromas. That's the name of the game. That's the ball game. Franck, tu fais combien de baguettes par jour et puis par semaine? Franck bakes 1,000 to 3,000 baguettes a day. His baguettes go to a vast number of faithful patrons. And that means that every day, hundreds and hundreds of people are coming into this bakery to buy bread. You think that there are 32,400 bake shops all throughout France. You have processions of literally hundreds of thousands of people leaving their homes like lemmings going to the sea. There's still this visceral attachment that the French have to their daily bread. This bread is extremely hot right now. They're wonderfully well cooked. They have a crust which is golden brown. We don't judge a monk by his habit, we say, or a book by its cover. But still, the look is important because it incites us to a certain lust to taste. We don't want to break open a baguette because we will lacerate its crumb structure. So we want to pull out our local bread knife. It's not a good idea to walk on planes with this. This for me is the moment which has the most emotional charge. It's the moment of anticipation. If bread had a soul, I think the soul would be in its perfume. So I'm going to put it to my nose. I'm struck by a flavor of butter, of walnuts, of a slight layer of chocolate. It's a wonderful panoply of complementary aromas. So I want to put it in my mouth. The taste is marvelous. It's spellbinding. It requires nothing else. You don't need ham and cheese. You don't need jelly. You don't need anything else. You need a little bit of imagination. You need a lovely day. You need a Paris street to walk on. It's marvelous. It's just delicious.
Most Italians wouldn't consider a meal complete if bread wasn't on the table. Salute e complimenti.
Bread is a part of the daily meal, but it's also part of celebration. Bread is intrinsic.
Ladies, you've seen one of the most simple things.
I spoke once with a bread engineer. He came to this little shop. He'd done quite a bunch of work for a large-scale factory-style bakery. He said what he loved most about his work was that no matter how much they tried to make this process fit into this production line, somehow the yeast always foiled them. They could never quite get it to behave. You know, I think that's beautiful. Okay, Pasco. Allez, monsieur. Once upon a time, in this area, you know, there weren't really farmers markets. People would deliver products with horse and wagon. I've had some interesting conversations with some old-timers that remember that. Hello, Mr. Deverander.
One for your neighbors as well.
Thank you, man.
Cheers.
You have a good day. Thanks. Ça va, Pasco. Allez.